Hi there, and welcome to Specifically About Quality. Every episode, we dive into the real issues quality professionals face and how to solve them. I'm Agata Lewkowska, specialist in quality management systems in the automotive industry.
And I'm Christopher Scott, a quality management specialist in the automotive industry as well. We're looking forward to sharing today's insights with you. If you like what you hear, follow us and leave your comments. We want to keep this conversation going with the entire Qualitywise community. We invite you also to our podcast newsletter. For every episode, we prepare a newsletter with additional materials, free resources, and practical downloads related to the topic, and with access to all previous freebies from previous episodes. You can sign up directly on our website at Qualitywise under resources or with the link provided with today's episode in the description. Expect the podcast newsletter every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central European Time.
Today, we're talking about real, I would say engineered, physical, error-proofing solutions embedded in production processes, the kind that physically prevent the system from making a wrong product.
And I want to say that I love this topic. This is something that I've been living and breathing for the last 15 or so years, if not more than that. And because in automotive, what I want to say is that error-proofing is not a soft concept. It's a system requirement. And it is explicitly addressed in IATF 16949 in clause 10.2.4.
So let's clarify the terminology because we often use error-proofing and mistake-proofing interchangeably, but there is a nuance. First of all, in IATF, we will not meet this term mistake-proofing. The standard operates only with error-proofing. It is reasonable due to the goal of IATF 16949, which is to reduce the waste and variation in the supply chain. However, if you are working with APQP, both terms are used. So let's start from the basis now, and let's define what APQP is saying about error-proofing, because APQP definition is really aligned with this what also IATF is understanding. Error-proofing in simple words is a technique which shall be used to identify potential errors. And based on this, we shall design them out of the manufacturing process or eliminate the possibility that error could produce a non-conformance. So, in other words, error-proofing focuses on designing processes or systems in the way that prevents error from occurring in the first place. It involves implementing measures to eliminate or maybe minimize the possibility of mistakes at every stage of production. And the primary goal is to address potential sources of errors proactively, thereby reducing rework, waste, and defects. Chris, can you elaborate on mistake-proofing, please?
Right, I get it. Again, let's start with the fundamentals of how this term is defined in the new third edition of APQP, which was issued in March in 2024, as it's not present in IATF. Mistake proofing, it's a method that allows you to identify errors after they occur. Mistake proofing should be used as a technique to control repetitive tasks or actions to prevent non-conformities that are being passed on to subsequent operations and ultimately to the customer. While error-proofing focuses on preventing the errors at the source, mistake-proofing emphasizes mitigating the consequences of the inevitable human errors. Unlike machines, humans are prone to making mistakes due to various factors such as fatigue, distraction, or lack of attention to detail. Mistake-proofing acknowledges this reality and seeks to design systems or processes that minimize the impact of human fallibility. In practical terms, a checklist is not error-proofing. A warning sign is not error-proofing. A physical interlock that prevents the wrong part from being assembled, that's not error-proofing.
You mentioned, Chris, at the very beginning that we have in IATF a specific clause dedicated to error-proofing. So let me discuss a little bit this clause. This is clause 10.2.4. So what is actually required? First, what I would say is that every organization shall have a documented process, which means that we need to have a standardized approach how we are working with error-proofing, because the goal is to determine the use of appropriate error-proofing methodologies. And that means it must be systematic, not accidental.
The second one I would say is that the method must be documented in the process risk analysis, meaning a process failure mode and effects analysis. If your PFMEA identifies high severity risks but does not evaluate your error-proofing opportunities, you are not compliant.
The third requirement is that test frequencies must be defined in the control plan. So your error-proofing is not install and forget. it must be periodically verified.
Fourth, you must test devices for failure or simulated failure. That means that you intentionally test the system with a known defect to verify if it reacts correctly. This is critical. So what should you ask yourself? You need to ask, what happens if the sensor is dirty? So if it's an optical sensor, it relies on light or reflectivity of light or against the surface. That can affect it. What if the cable disconnects? Does it have like a mistake proofing to make sure the cable stays in and it can't be removed? What if the camera loses calibration? It needs to be frequently checked against some sort of calibration plate or template. This is where a challenge part comes in. Challenge or a master part, what does this mean? Is parts of known specifications. They're calibrated, they are traceable to standards, with expected results pass-fail that are used to validate the functionality of an error-proofing device, or check fixtures like go-no-go, gap gauges, and so on. You intentionally insert a known defect and confirm the system blocks it, and you record it.
Yes, and the fifth requirement is challenge parts must be identified, controlled, verified, and calibrated if this will be feasible.
And finally, error-proof device failures must have a reaction plan, just like if it was a product that failed. If your sensor fails, what happens? Does your production continue or does the line stop? If there is no reaction plan, you have false security, and the reaction plan must define stop production, 100% inspection, segregation of suspect parts, escalation to the quality team, and this must be in the control plan.
So let's now jump into the error proofing as a portion of design and development, okay? One of the requirements where you will find the necessity of using error proofing methods is simply manufacturing process design input. So you see, error proofings must be your information, how you are designing these error proofings, to later see reflected in manufacturing process design outputs. So in manufacturing design outputs, this is the second clause where you can find the requirements connected to error proofing.
Exactly. And during process design, you should ask yourself, where is human interaction required? What orientation is critical? Where is torque safety critical? What mix-ups are possible? And you design fixtures, sensors, interlocks accordingly. If you wait for customer complaints, you're way too late. So the next sort of part of the podcast today is to talk about real automotive examples or something in other industries called a hard poka-yoke.
Chris, so as you're a more operational quality expert and this topic is one of your favorite, may I ask you to give us examples of error proofing?
Yeah, so I'll give a really specific automotive one from my experience where I want to talk about something called a steering column. It's the main device that connects the steering rack to your wheels, and this is what connects to your steering wheel. So you adjust it, you can turn it. And in the vast majority of automotive companies, they make sure that when you have a left-hand drive car, which is mainly the 70% of the world volume, versus a right-hand drive, which seems to be the minority, you need to make sure that you can't put the wrong steering column onto the wrong vehicle because there's different lengths of the steering shaft or the yoke. So therefore, you need to make sure that it's error-proof by design. So what this means is the mounting brackets which go onto the bulkhead inside the car, they have something called a keyway. And that keyway, if you think about a lock and key, a key can only go into a lock in a certain orientation. It can't go in upside down. It can't go in 90 degrees. It has to go in a certain way. And this is a perfect example of where error proofing, you cannot assemble the wrong component, a left-hand drive, in a right-hand drive place for a vehicle. Now, in the design phase, I have seen as well by mistake some automotive manufacturers, they don't put this in place and you can physically fit the wrong component in the wrong orientation. It means you can't drive the vehicle, but what it's going to do is it's going to stop the production line. And that's one of the worst things that can happen. There are some other examples for the non-automotive people who listen to our podcast. If you think about a USB connection, a USB-C is error-proof in the sense that you can put it anywhere you want. It can be upside down, it can be 180 degrees in orientation. But the previous designs, which is being phased out now within the industry, you cannot physically put a USB in the wrong way because of its keyway or its design or shape.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chris, for these examples of error proofing. But what about mistake proofing?
Well, mistake proofing, it is very different. Mistake proofing is where that the design itself doesn't stop the problem. What that means is that the process can create a defect, but we want to make sure that the defect is stopped right at the moment it is created. It's not about having an alarm which warns you, which people can ignore. It's about either a physical thing like a gauge where it cannot move down the conveyor line, therefore leave the process, or it is deliberately segregated through a sensor maybe through some sort of laser sensor or temperature sensor. It all depends on what it's doing, but there is a logic there in the process engineering element to make sure that the defective unit cannot leave the process and then be shipped to the customer.
So from my experiences, I would say that all the vision systems, for instance, or control systems, they are working like a mistake-proofing solutions, yes? But there is also one IATF requirement, which I didn't mention when we were talking about IATF requirements, but this one is connected to temporary changes of process controls. So please pay attention that in this point, in our organizations, we shall have the list of the process controls, which includes not only inspection, measuring, and test devices, but also error-proofing devices. What's more, when you would do a restart verification, this must be documented for a certain period of time when you had, for instance, temporary changes of process controls. And also, this is connected to the use of error-proofing devices, yes, that they are effectively reinstated, okay? Just for your reminder to remember if you are doing any temporary changes of process controls in the process. Okay, so let's sum up. Error-proofing is not an engineering discipline, I would say. It is about designing processes that protect the customer. And in automotive, it is not optional. It is a system expectation. And if your organization needs support, visit qualitywise.pl and book free consultation with us to learn how we can support you. We support automotive companies with workshops, trainings, consulting, and audits because quality is not about detecting defects. It is about designing them out of the system.
If this podcast has helped for you, we invite you to our podcast newsletter. For every episode, we prepare a newsletter with additional materials, free resources, and practical downloads related to the topic, and with access to all previous freebies from previous episodes. For today's episode, we've created Error Proofing, a practical implementation guide by Qualitywise. Subscribe to our Qualitywise newsletter, our Qualitywise website at qualitywise.pl under resources, or with the link provided with this episode to get it. Expect a podcast newsletter every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central European Time.
Thank you for listening to Specifically About Quality. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into quality management. In the meantime, if this episode was helpful, please like it, comment with your thoughts, and share it with your colleagues. See you next time on Specifically About Quality.